Hello and welcome to the May 2021 in-service. Before we get started with our training, let's go ahead and review our mission and our vision here at Wendell Foster. Our mission is to empower people with disabilities to realize their dreams and potential. And our vision is to be the premier provider of rehabilitative, community-based, and residential services. All of this is made possible by our great difference makers here at Wendell Foster. Our training today will cover the topics of Wendell Foster's 403B retirement plan as presented by E.M. Ford, HIPAA, information security, individual rights, abuse, neglect, and exploitation, policy updates, COVID-19 updates, and facility events.
Hello, Wendell Foster employees. This is Ryan McDaniel. I'm a financial advisor at E.M. Ford here in Owensboro. And today we're going to go over a refresher on Wendell Foster's retirement plan. So if you're a participant in the plan, the biggest change you've seen over the past couple of months, if you've looked at statements or if you've gone online, is that MassMutual is now called Empower Retirement. So no change to the plan itself or to your investments or anything like that, but just simply a marketing change. Instead of MassMutual being the provider of the plan, it's now called Empower Retirement. Here's a quick summary of what Wendell Foster's retirement plan offers for those that participate. They make two kinds of contributions. The first is a regular matching contribution. That's dollar for dollar up to 3%. There's also a non-elective contribution that Wendell Foster puts in, and that's 2%. So you get that just for being a regular full-time employee. There are pre-tax and post-tax contributions available. Sometimes post-tax contributions are called Roth contributions, but I would say if you can't decide on which one to go with, or if you wanted more information on that, just send me an email or give me a phone call. My information's on the last slide here. It's really based on your personal circumstance, and we can discuss that further. In regards to the plan, there are no loans available. So what does this mean to you, the participant? Well, if you were to contribute 3% of your pay to the 403B plan, which is the retirement plan, Wendell Foster would contribute 5%. So for example here, if you worked 40 hours a week and earned $10 an hour, then your weekly pay before taxes would be $400. Your contribution, your 3% of that would be $12. So the two contributions that Wendell Foster gives is the traditional match of 3%, which is $12. You'd also be able to receive the non-elective contribution of 2%, which is $8. So what you would get is you'd be saving $32, and it only cost you $12. So at the end of the day, that's free money and no reason to pass up free money. So despite the change from MassMutual to Empower, the way you access your account has not changed. The website that you go to is still retiresmart.com, and the app that's available to the employees is the Empower Retire Smart app. I'm happy to sit down with you one-on-one or a Zoom call, a phone call, whatever's easiest. Here's my information, my email, my phone. Last year was a crazy year, obviously, for everyone, but a lot happened in the retirement space, in the investment space. So if it's been a little bit since we've sat down and we've talked or even reviewed things, reach out to me. Let's go over it just to make sure you are where you need to be and where you should be. So thanks for watching, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
And now we're going to talk about HIPAA. HIPAA stands for the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. HIPAA is a regulation that establishes a national standard in the safeguarding of personal information and data that is stored in medical records. This information that's protected by HIPAA includes that of both employees and service recipients. The information protected by HIPAA is referred to as Protected Health Information, also known as PHI. PHI is any information that is oral, written, and recorded that can identify a person's health information. ePHI is the electronically generated identifiable medical health information. Examples include faxes, information sent by TheraP, and other electronic forms of communication. So basically, what HIPAA does is gives people more control in keeping health information about themselves private. And again, this affects both service recipients and employees. HIPAA is governed at Wendell Foster through policies, procedures, and best practices. It's very important that we understand that nobody wants their personal information shared without consent, especially medical information. At Wendell Foster, it's our responsibility to ensure that the information of those that live here and receive services here stay protected along with the staff. Keeping people's information secure is not just the job of management, it's everybody's job. So please be mindful of what we say around other people. Do not give out information about somebody's medical condition. The nurses and the case managers are the ones that know who to share information with. Be careful what you post on social media. Not only do we want to make sure that we represent everybody in the best light when we post pictures of them on social media, we also want to make sure we don't violate HIPAA. And that leads us to making sure we don't share medical information about your coworkers. Just because you know somebody is sick doesn't mean you should tell other people they're sick. They have that right to share that information with the people they choose. HIPAA applies to more than just verbal information. It also protects medical information that's written, recorded, and in electronic form. So it's for this reason we have policies preventing employees from taking medical records off-site. This policy alone is not enough, though. In this day and age of technology, we need to become aware of how vulnerable medical information is when it comes to hackers. So to protect this electronic personal health information, we have Policy F12. Policy F12 states that we should never send ePHI in emails. We should only send this information through a secure service such as TheraP. Policy F14 governs social media in HIPAA. Now, according to this policy, employees may only post identifiable information about current service recipients when it meets the criteria of 1. The person has a valid release of information signed by them and or their legal guardian to authorize the release. 2. The identifiable information released is limited to a photograph, first name, plus their last initial and the person's association with Wendell Foster. And 3. All information released presents the service recipients favorably and supports Wendell Foster's positive reputation in the community. Now, please understand that no information about a person's treatment or health conditions should be released unless authorized. And if you're asked to remove information or pictures that you posted to social media, we hope you understand why. We have a duty to protect the PHI of those that receive services here. Now, while these rules are simple, if they're followed, they can go a long way towards keeping information secure. Sometimes it's tough to hear about somebody being ill and not knowing the details. The longer you work here, the harder this becomes. So despite our desire to know and our level of caring about the person, we really need to be mindful that we don't violate HIPAA by requesting or giving out information to others when it's not needed. In these instances, if you desire to know more about somebody's health condition, what you really need to do is direct your request to the case manager or the QIDP. They will be able to help you if at all possible. Also, be very mindful of where you're having your conversations about people and their health conditions and who may be listening. These conversations should never be occurring in the break room or around other people where they may inadvertently hear somebody's information. This should instead be held in private conversation in an area where others may not overhear. And whenever you're sending faxes, make sure you supply a cover sheet, and if you receive a fax that does not belong to you, turn that fax over so you don't read it and give it to the right person. Another way to protect ePHI is by being aware of information security. Now, because we use emails, the internet, and computers, we're all responsible for information security. Now, information security deals with protecting PHI, and is basically talking about preventing data breaches occurring here at work. A data breach can occur in many different ways, one of which is the lost or misplaced mobile device. Now, we've all heard these stories on the news before. Somebody left a laptop in a car and it ended up stolen or missing. Well, this stolen or missing laptop can lead to ePHI ending up in the wrong hands. Another way this occurs is through hackers. Oftentimes, hackers will actually research a facility and probe them for any weaknesses in their security system. Then they'll stage an attack through various methods that will expose and download information that they want so they can use it. Now, other ways that this information is stolen is through email phishing and malicious codes being installed on the computer. Email phishing usually appears from a well-known organization and is asked for your personal information, such as credit card number, social security number, account number, or passwords. These emails oftentimes appear to come from a legitimate site and company that you may or may not have even done business with. But because it looks so similar to a legitimate account, a lot of times people fall victim to this. And once this vulnerability is exploited, the person's information is then stolen. Malicious codes can be placed on a computer by just visiting a website that may be infected with a virus or by using an unauthorized storage device at a workstation. So it's important that we all understand how this can happen so we can prevent it from happening. So what happens to the patients when their EPHI is actually stolen? Well, according to Brandon Ridgen, a victim of medical record theft, it's a mess. Now, Ridgen's identity was stolen in 2004, and the person who accessed his information used it to steal cars and rack up $20,000 worth of medical procedures. Ridgen said he was able to get the charges scrubbed from his credit report until the next billing cycle. Then he had to do it again. He said it was about a decade of cleaning up a mess. Now, the person who stole his identity ended up serving time in prison, but 15 years later, Ridgen said he still hasn't been able to undo all the damage, including to the integrity of his own medical files. Now, that hospital might still have his information, his blood type, under my name at the hospital, Ridgen said. And oh no, that's kind of weird to think about. Somebody can actually steal your medical identity and have procedures done under your name while you pay for the debt. So as we can tell from Ridgen's story, EPHI is really something we need to protect. HIPAA is something that's very serious. But we also need to understand it doesn't just apply to computers or the internet or just to something that's written down in a record. It also applies to cell phones. Cell phones are being used regularly to steal information. It wasn't too long ago I received a phone call from AT&T. There was a voicemail that was left on my cell phone asking me to call the number back, and then it asked for my AT&T username and password to make sure my phone wasn't disconnected. Now, I didn't call the number. Instead, I looked up AT&T's phone number and called them directly from the number that was listed on their website. And those two phone numbers I was given was the wrong number. When I called AT&T, they said that this is a common attempt to steal information. So this was a wake-up call for me. I changed my password to make sure it was more complicated to prevent anybody from accessing my account. Now, I know this email here is a little bit blurry, but it's a very good example of a phishing email. As we can see, it states that it's from the IRS. It even looks legitimate. It talks about a tax refund, so heck, that's awesome. And it even has a very handy click here link to direct you to their website so you can get your money a lot quicker. But here's the thing, folks. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. I guarantee you the IRS will never send you an email about them owing you money or you receiving money from them. So obviously these attempts at stealing information are very successful, or they wouldn't be used today. This is why it's important to follow the policy and procedures that we have at Wendell Foster. You must make sure that if you use a mobile device for work purposes, that it's secure from being lost or stolen. And the paperwork that is shown here must be completed. The device needs to be password protected, and remote location and or erasing functions need to be activated. Another weakness in the field of information security are flash drives. All flash drives that are used here at Wendell Foster need to be approved by IT before they're given to employees. We try to keep flash drives under strict control in order to minimize the risk of having our systems infected with viruses. In the past, flash drives have been found to be infected with viruses from the factories or third parties. So that's why it's best not to plug any mobile storage device into a Wendell Foster computer unless you have IT's permission and they've scanned it for viruses first. And this includes your phone. You should never plug your phone into any of the Wendell Foster computers to prevent viruses from entering our system. Plugging into a public USB port is kind of like finding a toothbrush on the side of the road and deciding to stick it in your mouth. You have no idea where the thing has been. And that's a quote by Caleb Barlow, who is Vice President of X-Force Threat Intelligence at IBM Security. He also states that we need to remember that USB ports can pass data. It's much safer to bring your regular charger along and plug it into a wall or outlet, or you could also bring a portable power bank to recharge your phone when you're low on bars. Now, the term juice jacking was first used in 2011 after users plugged their phones into a free charging station and a message appeared on the kiosk screen saying, quote, "You should not trust public kiosks with your smartphone. Information can be retrieved or downloaded without your consent. Luckily for you, the station has taken the ethical route and your data is safe. Enjoy the free charge." So if you need to travel for work purposes or even personal purposes, make sure that you bring a charger with you or a battery bank. Now, public Wi-Fi, as we all know, can be found in popular public places like airports and coffee shops. And they allow you to connect to the internet for free. Now, these hotspots are so widespread and common that usually we connect to them without even thinking, and we'll log into accounts with our username and passwords and not give it a second thought. But this could be risky. The problem with public Wi-Fi is that there are a tremendous number of risks that go along with these networks. And while business owners may believe they're providing a good service to their customers, there's a good chance the security on these networks is lax or non-existent. What is called the man-in-the-middle attacks is one of the most common threats on these networks. Essentially, a man-in-the-middle attack is a form of eavesdropping. So when a computer makes a connection to the internet, data is sent from point A, the computer, to point B, the service or website. And vulnerabilities can allow an attacker to go in between you and these transmissions to read your data. So what you thought was private, such as your username and your password, your bank account, or your credit card number, is no longer private. There are also unencrypted networks. Encryption means that the information that is sent between your computer and the wireless router are in the forms of a secret code, so that it cannot be read by anybody who doesn't have the key to decipher the code. Most routers are shipped from the factory with encryption turned off by default, and it must be turned back on when the network is set up. If an IT professional sets up the network, chances are good that the encryption has been enabled. However, there's no surefire way to tell if this has happened. You also have the threat of malware distribution. Thanks to software vulnerabilities, there are also ways that attackers can slip malware onto your computer without you even knowing. A software vulnerability is a security hole or weakness found in an operating system or software programs. Hackers can exploit this weakness by writing code to target a specific vulnerability and then injecting malware onto your device. And then you have snooping and sniffing. Wi-Fi snooping and sniffing is what it sounds like. Cyber criminals can buy special software kits and even devices to help assist them with eavesdropping on Wi-Fi signals. This technique allows them to access everything that you're doing online, from viewing a whole web page you've visited, including any information you might have filled out on forms, to being able to capture your login credentials and even hijack your accounts. And finally, there are the malicious hotspots. These rogue access points trick victims into connecting to what they think is a legitimate network because the name sounds reputable. So say you're staying at the Goodnight Inn and you want to connect to the hotel's Wi-Fi. You may think you're selecting the correct one when you click on Goodnight Inn, but you haven't. Instead, you just connected to a rogue hotspot set up by cyber criminals who can now view your sensitive information. So if you're traveling for work or personal purposes, be aware that threats are out there so your EPHI is not stolen. Another way to protect EPHI is to make sure your passwords are hard to guess. Now, this is why you don't want it associated with your subject matter that you're linked to. Being random with your password and changing it frequently is what works the best. Another good tip is to use different passwords for each website, app, or device. This way, if somebody figures out a password, your other information is safe. Of course, nothing is foolproof, but if somebody's going to steal my information, I'm going to at least make them work for it. Passwords should contain symbols, numbers, upper and lowercase, and at least 9 characters. Thankfully, we have an awesome IT team that works diligently to make sure our systems are secure. They recommend that if you feel your computer has been breached, hacked, taken over, or you clicked on a link you shouldn't, unplug your computer immediately, then notify IT and management. So to sum it up, if your portable device has been linked to a data breach and these procedures have not been followed, you have opened yourself up to work and personal legal ramifications. And now we're going to talk about individual rights, abuse, and neglect. Wendell Foster's policies and procedures concerning resident rights, abuse, and neglect come from the federal and state regulations that govern our operations. Wendell Foster also operates within the 2 philosophies that inherently minimize the potential for abuse and neglect, that is, person-centered thinking and our organizational values. Per federal and state regulation, each client, parent, or legal guardian is to be informed of the client's medical condition, developmental and behavioral status, and attendant risk of treatment, and of the right to refuse treatment. These regulations also state that Wendell Foster must ensure the rights of each individual. These rights include those as a citizen of the United States, the right to file complaints, and the right to due process. The regulations that we see here ensure that each individual is allowed to manage their financial affairs as they desire, along with teaching them to do so to the extent of their capabilities. Each service recipient also has the right to be free from unnecessary drugs and physical restraints, and to be provided active treatment to reduce dependency on drugs and physical restraints. Also, every service recipient has the right to personal privacy, to include bathing, dressing, and at other times that they desire. This right for privacy also extends to treatment and the attending to of personal needs. Every client also has the right to not be compelled to work for free at Wendell Foster. Clients that do work for the facility are compensated for their efforts at prevailing wages in accordance with their abilities. Every client also has the opportunity to send and receive an open mail. Every client is also to have access to telephones with privacy for phone calls except when stated otherwise in their program plan. We're to also ensure that clients have the opportunity to participate in social, religious, and community group activities. And every client has the right to own and keep appropriate personal possessions and clothing. And the clothing that they wear should be their own and nobody else's. In the event that a husband and wife live here, they both have the right to share a room. Regulations also state that our facility must develop and implement written policies and procedures that prohibit mistreatment, neglect, or abuse of the people that live here. Wendell Foster policy prohibits neglect and or abuse of individuals, and Wendell Foster will complete investigations of reported individual neglect and or abuse within 5 working days from the initial report and implement needed corrective actions as appropriate. And according to regulation, staff of this facility cannot use physical, verbal, sexual, or psychological abuse or punishment. So the study that we see here really hits me in the gut. How often do we work with people and not know their past story? The story that they will never tell anybody, or maybe they're unable to tell it. The story of abuse that the memory of them is haunted by every day and causes them to act out in ways that we call behaviors. We may never know the abuse that people have gone through, but by looking at this study, we should become aware and approach people from a deeper understanding of what may be haunting them. Over 70% of people with disabilities report being victims of abuse. 9% of them said it was on multiple occasions. That is very scary. So now we're going to look at the 4 types of abuse. There's physical abuse, verbal abuse, psychological abuse, and sexual abuse. Physical abuse is the unnecessary use of physical force, such as hitting somebody, administering a treatment too roughly. This could be when giving medications, treating a wound, providing personal care. It could even be when somebody's being repositioned in a wheelchair and they're being roughly handled. Now, verbal abuse can include anything from giving somebody the middle finger, leaving nasty comments on someone's Facebook page, berating somebody for being incontinent when they can't help it, ordering somebody around, and yelling at somebody to shut up. Sexual abuse is the improper touching or coercion to perform sexual acts with a person with developmental disabilities or with a minor. As we can see from the Hinsberger study, 8 out of 10 females and 6 out of 10 males with developmental disabilities are sexually abused more than once. Now, psychological abuse is a behavior that may result in psychological trauma, including anxiety, chronic depression, or post-traumatic stress disorder. This includes making people believe that they will not receive care or food and water, telling someone that you love to smack them, yelling, shouting and screaming, or talking to somebody as if they were a child. It could also be when you make somebody feel guilty for something that they cannot control, such as incontinence. Neglect is the absence of services that should have been rendered. It's also the failure to react to a situation which may be harmful. Most of us have heard of Willowbrook and the people that were abused and neglected there, and that was back in the 60s and 70s. But here it is. In 2018, on February 26, more than 30 residents of a South Suburban Assisted Living facility were evacuated and hospitalized after they were found with no staff on duty and living in deplorable conditions. This is an example of people not receiving the services necessary to maintain health and welfare. Neglect is preventable. We have plans that must be followed, and we have checks and balances along with co-workers to ensure we provide the highest quality of care. We also have supervisors and managers to ensure the necessary policies and procedures are in place. We must not become complacent, though. The moment we let our guard down, neglect can happen. So if you ever see someone being neglected, your first step is to do something to protect the person. Restricting a person's rights is not taken lightly. There is a process that has to be followed each and every time. In fact, unauthorized or unapproved restrictions can be considered abuse. Examples include removing somebody's personal belongings, or turning off their electric wheelchair, or even taking it out of gear. Wendell Foster is legally bound to ensure that all allegations of mistreatment, neglect, or abuse, as well as any injury with an unknown origin, are reported immediately. The procedures that are in place, when followed precisely, will ensure that each allegation is handled consistently each and every time. If you suspect any abuse or neglect, you are to report it to your supervisor, a member of management, or nurse on duty as soon as the people in your care are safe. This is crucial. Don't wait a day. Don't wait a week. Report as soon as possible. The more you wait, the longer the person could be abused or neglected. But please be careful. This doesn't mean that you leave the person you're caring for in unsafe or unattended conditions while you report it. It means you ensure to the safety and well-being of those in your care and then report the incident. If you don't report this, then you're being neglectful and you're going to cause it to happen again. And when it's discovered, you're going to be held just as accountable as the person that committed the abuse or neglectful act. And there will be criminal or legal ramifications for it. In accordance to the law, once a report is made, Wendell Foster must have evidence that the incident is investigated thoroughly and that actions are taken to prevent further potential abuse during the investigative process. There is a window of 5 working days in which this investigation should occur and be wrapped up. After that time, if the alleged violation is verified, appropriate corrective actions must be taken. And here is the overall investigation process. 1. A report is made. 2. The suspected employee is removed from working within contact of individuals during the investigative proceedings. And 3. The investigation is concluded within 5 days of the initial report. During this process, Wendell Foster will ensure to the individual's safety, treat all allegations in the investigation confidentially, and obtain written statements from all witnesses and/or involved parties. When you write a statement, you're to answer the questions of who, what, when, where, and how. When it comes to who, you're to write about the employees that are involved, the individuals involved, or the other people that may have seen or heard the incident, and who you reported this to if you did report it. When you write about what, you should ask yourself and write about exactly what happened. What was said or done that made you feel like it was abusive? or did you do something to intervene? When you're writing about the when, you should write about the time of day that it happened. Were there other activities going on that may have helped you remember this? Did you report it to somebody? If so, when did you report it? And then when it comes to writing about the where exactly was the person when it happened? Where exactly was the individual? Where were they sitting, laying, or standing? Where did the incident start or end? And when you answer the question of how did the person be abused or neglected? How did the individual react? How did you intervene to keep the person safe? How did you report this? Most of the time, when abuse and neglect happens, it's due to a staff member being overstressed. Whether it's from personal life problems or work-life problems, stress is real and is dangerous. So please, take time to practice self-care so that you may establish a healthy balance in your life. The following list are ways in which you can beat the stress that you may find. Stay away from drugs. Limit your alcohol intake. Find time to chill and relax. Take a break. Ask for help. Exercise. Go for a walk, explore nature, maybe go fishing and read a book. Take a breath and take a break. And whatever you do, make sure you take care of you. You matter to all of us that work here. In summary, Wendell Foster has zero tolerance for abuse and neglect. It's your responsibility to report abuse and neglect as soon as possible to a member of management. And when writing a statement, always answer the who, what, when, where, and how. And please help protect those we support by watching out for physical, verbal, sexual, and psychological abuse. And now we're going to talk about the COVID-19 vaccine. So the question here is, do I still need to wear a mask while at work even though I'm vaccinated? And the answer is yes. The CDC continues to recommend masking in healthcare settings regardless of vaccination status. And along with that question, this one is, do I still need to wear a mask at work after the state mandate ends on June 11th? And again, the answer is yes. We will continue to follow the CDC guidelines as well as guidance issued by our state regulatory bodies. Now, this guidance includes masking in healthcare settings regardless of vaccination status. And as you can see here, all staff will need to continue submitting to signs and symptoms daily at the beginning of their workday, even if they've previously had COVID or have been vaccinated. So here's some good news. If you're considered to be fully vaccinated, what that means is it's been 2 weeks after your final dose. You do not have to submit to the ICF Mandatory Surveillance Testing Program unless you're displaying symptoms of COVID-19. And here's some more good news when it comes to that COVID test. Due to Davis County being in yellow status in regard to COVID infections, we can now drop down to monthly testing. So the next test will be June 8th, 9th, and 10th from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. each of those days. If our county status reverts back to orange before this date, we will test before that week and we will let everybody know. So let's talk about the benefits of receiving the COVID vaccine. According to the CDC, based on what we know about vaccines for other diseases and early data from clinical trials, experts believe that if you get this vaccine, it will also help keep you from getting seriously sick, even if you get COVID-19. Now, per the CDC, after you're fully vaccinated for COVID-19, you may be able to start doing some of the things you stopped doing because of the pandemic, such as gathering indoors without masks with other people who are fully vaccinated. That's because the COVID-19 vaccine helps protect you by creating an antibody response without having to experience sickness. The CDC states that the COVID-19 vaccines are safe and effective, and that the vaccines do not contain a live virus that causes COVID-19. So a COVID-19 vaccine cannot make you sick with COVID-19. Okay, so let's talk about some of the potential risk of side effects when receiving COVID-19. Per the CDC, you may have some side effects which are normal signs that your body is building protection, and these side effects may affect your ability to do daily activities, but they should go away in a few days. And some people don't even have side effects at all. The possible side effects include pain, redness, or swelling at the injection site, tiredness, headache, muscle pain, chills, fever, and nausea. Now, as to who's approved to get the vaccine, per the CDC, everybody 12 years of age and older are now eligible to get a COVID-19 vaccine. Local vaccine providers can be found at www.vaccines.gov by zip code search. As of May 18, 2021, there are over 11 providers within a 10-mile radius of Owensboro, Kentucky, with in-stock vaccinations. Now, some of these providers include Owensboro Health, Davis County Health Department, Walmart, Walgreens, Meijer, CVS Pharmacy, Kroger's, and there are many more. For more information on the COVID-19 vaccine, you can visit vaccine.ky.gov.
I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places that this heart of mine embraces all day through. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is blue, I'll be looking at the moon, and I'll be seeing you.
On Thursday, July 22, 2021, Wendell Foster is hosting its annual First Responders Barbecue. This event is an opportunity for Wendell Foster to show appreciation to our local first responders for keeping our community safe. From 10:30 a.m. until 1 o'clock p.m., this event will bring police officers, firefighters, EMTs, and the Sheriff's Department to our facility for some barbecue, meeting, and greeting. Please show your appreciation for their hard work by marking your calendars to attend. On Friday, August 20th, 2021, at Ben Haas Municipal Golf Course, Wendell Foster is having its golf scramble as presented by Old National Bank. On Saturday, September 25th, 2021, Wendell Foster will be having its Forever a Difference Maker dinner, auction, and dance. This event raises money that's used to empower people with disabilities to realize their dreams and potential. If you're interested in volunteering for this event, please contact Sarah Poole at extension 450. Wendell Foster's annual half marathon will be held on November 13th, 2021. Registration for this event is open for everybody. Simply go to wendellfoster.org/half-marathon to register today. This event is only possible through the many volunteers that generously donate their time. If you're interested in volunteering at this event, please contact Sarah Poole at extension 450. On Saturday, October 23rd, from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. at the Owensboro Convention Center, Wendell Foster will be hosting the Special Needs Expo. Please mark this on your calendar, and if you're free that day, stop by and say hi to those manning the Wendell Foster booth. And that concludes the May 2021 in-service. At this time, please take a moment to complete your test and turn it in to Wesley Gaynor.